The curfew tolls the knell of parting days. The lowing herd winds slowly o'er the lea. The ploughman homeward plods his weary way and leaves the world to darkness and to me.
The O'Higgins family, Aidan, Deirdre, Nullig, Brian, Brendan, Eilish, Sheila, Mairead and myself bid you all a very céad míle fáilte and a great welcome to this event. We would particularly like to welcome members of the Royal British Legion, the 22nd Battalion Society or Organisation, ONE, UN Vets and the Irish Guards Association of the Republic of Ireland. We also have great pleasure in welcoming Noel Grealish, TD, Martin Conway, Senator Martin Conway, local senator from Ennistimon, and Senator Gerard Craughwell, who will be addressing the parade very shortly. We take great pleasure in thanking those who made this ceremony possible today, particularly Tom Walsh, Martin Mannion, Father O'Loughlin, and a myriad of others who have made this possible for us today. Our story begins on the 1st of January 1914 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where a son was born, Bernardo O'Higgins, to an Irish family who had settled in the Argentine to explore the rapidly opening up of South America. At the outbreak of war, his father, Richard O'Higgins, returned to Ireland to take his place to fight for the freedom of small nations, and was followed sometime later by his wife and children. 5 years later, the young boy affectionately known as Barney would have his world and that of his sisters turned upside down, as his mother died during the influenza pandemic and his father was forced by circumstances outside his control to return to the Argentine. Barney and his sisters would never see their father again. His sisters were dispersed to the four winds under the care of Richard's sisters and aunts in various convent boarding schools in England and in France. Barney was raised and educated by his aged grandparents, both school principals in Lahinch, and became a much-loved and highly respected schoolmaster, musician, dramatist, trade unionist with the INTO, political activist, and commander of the local defence forces at the FCA with his beloved 22nd Battalion. He lived a full and active life. A short time prior to his death, he indicated to me that his greatest regret was not that enough had been said or done to remember his father and his father's three brothers, and to mark their roles played in the Great War. Barney felt that he had been an unwilling participant in a conspiracy of silence. He said that the bitterest tears shed over graves are the words left unsaid and the deeds left undone. These words now form part of the memorial which we are unveiling today. He felt that a great wrong had been done to their memory. We are here today to redress that wrong. Now we'd like to call on Senator Craughwell to unveil the memorial to Michael O'Higgins, killed on this day in 1916. As he unveils the memorial, the piper will play Let Erin Remember, which is the slow march of the Irish Guards, played at funerals and such solemn events as we have today. Senator Crockwell will now address the group.
Thank you. Very Reverend Father, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm proud indeed to be here today to stand among former colleagues from both the British and the Irish Army. Over 49,400 Irish men gave their lives in the war to end all wars, the First World War. And of those, 35,000 died in the service of the British Army. Speaking recently, Taoiseach Leo Varadkar said that for some families and communities, silence was the path chosen to remembrance. For almost 100 years, it has suited many in the Irish Republic to portray those who volunteered to serve in World War I as anti-nationalists, Protestants and Unionists loyal to king and country. A trip to the Somme tells a very different story. Take a casual walk through the cemeteries around the Somme, and there you will find lying side by side soldiers of the 36th Ulster Division, largely Ulster Protestants who joined for king and country. And next to them you'll find soldiers of the 10th and 16th Irish Division, mainly Southern nationalists. There's no politics or division there. They're all Irish men who gave their lives for a cause. Perhaps not the same cause, but for a cause nonetheless. As a civilian, our view of war has been glorified but through the Hollywood lens. There was no glory for those living in the mud and filth of ration-infested trenches. There was no glory in the stench of death and dying all around you. There is nothing in war but fear and courage. The soldier is at the mercy of the orders coming from on high, from those who are immune from the consequence. Yet when the call came, young men left their families, their jobs, their farms, their studies, only to be thrust into the most horrific conditions, living at the very limits of human endurance for a cause they believed in. Today we gather to remember 4 Liscannor men, the O'Higgins brothers, who fought in the Great War 1914-18. We remember Michael, Thomas, Patrick and Richard, all airbrushed from folk memory and consigned to obscurity from the national consciousness, victims of our joint historical amnesia that lasted more than 100 years. So today we ask, why did the O'Higgins brothers join the British Army? 2 of them returned from Argentina to do so. We know that, like thousands of their countrymen, they joined out of a sense of duty. They joined for the freedom of small nations. They joined for the promise of home rule for Ireland. They left Ireland full of expectation. They expected to return as heroes. They expected a bright future with homes waiting fit for heroes. Sadly, the O'Higginses, like all returning soldiers, were not welcomed home. Thousands who had served were vilified, ostracised and treated as pariahs. No account was taken for the 4 years of unimaginable horror these men had endured. No recognition of the motives behind their service. In truth, many, like the O'Higgins brothers, served for Ireland. Men like Michael O'Higgins gave his life in the cause of freedom of small nations and the promise of home rule for Ireland. Michael was expeditiously forgotten, and like so many more, until today, he was never spoken of again. The returning maimed with physical and mental illnesses, such as Michael's brother Thomas, were hidden from view and in most cases died in obscurity. The survivors of the Great War, such as Michael's brothers Patrick and Richard, were ostracised. They were misfits and outcast in their societies, consigned to menial task, menial work, or exiled. As the century of the end of the Great War approaches, a mature Ireland is now free to remember the contribution of the O'Higgins brothers. We recognise and acknowledge the sacrifice and suffering they experienced on the Western Front and the hurt they must have felt due to the treatment they received when they returned home. Today we commemorate the life of Michael O'Higgins, for on this day 102 years ago he was killed in action, winning in that action his military medal for bravery. For most of those 102 years, Michael's memory has been veiled in secrecy. Over the last 100 years or so, if the O'Higgins brothers were spoken of, it was in whispers. Today, we shake off the shackles of old Ireland and remember Michael with drums and trumpets. The relatives of Michael O'Higgins stand proud here today, and we give him the recognition befitting of a hero. When I think of Michael O'Higgins' last hours, I think of the trenches, the claustrophobia he must have felt, the stench of fear, and the absolute courage that led to the award of the military medal for bravery. Today, I also think of the men and women of the Irish Defence Forces and Irish regiments in trenches, dugouts, and places such as South Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, the Golan Heights, and Afghanistan. They sit and they joke and play cards and cook meals. They while away their time thinking of family or writing home. They live in cramped underground quarters. They're never sure when or if the next attack will come. Some may die like Michael O'Higgins did. Some may return changed forever like Thomas O'Higgins did, suffering from the ravages of post-traumatic stress disorder which wasn't recognised at that time. Others will return picking up the threads of their interrupted life like Patrick and Richard O'Higgins did. It is important that we do not forget the men and women who serve in the armed forces, both past and present, and acknowledge their loyalty with respect. Today's ceremony reminds us of the awful truth that war is hell. As a nation, we must do our best not to put our Defence Force personnel in harm's way by our unflinching support for the United Nations worldwide. We must support the men and women of our Defence Forces as they work for peace in some of the most hostile places in the world. And when they come home, we must treat them with respect. In conclusion, today is about respect for a fallen hero, Michael O'Higgins' military medal. Sadly, there are no photographs or letters home in existence from Michael. The entire family paper archive was lost in a fire destroying Seamount House during the period from the end of the Great War and the foundation of the state. We salute Michael and his brothers, Thomas, Richard and Patrick, and we say thank you for your service. When I was asked to come here today, I didn't realise that lying in the same graveyard in Tibal in France, somewhere close to where Michael is, a relation of my own lies there. And that just brings home to us the number of Irish people that went and served for the freedom of small nations and in the hope of home rule for Ireland. And I hope that as Michael spent his last few minutes on this world, that something like a verse of a poem I picked up from Andrew Blakemore might have gone through his head. And it goes, "Yet through the battle's roar I hear the sweetest song of love, and it shall drown those screams and cries like raindrops from above. May they fall like notes of silver on the fields now stained with blood, and douse the fiery flames of hell that burn within the mud." Deepest respect to the O'Higginses, and in particular to Michael O'Higgins, who paid the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you.
Now we'd like to call on Canon Thomas Marnan, parish priest of Gort, County Galway, but also a very, very, very special cousin of ours from Barthrow.
In the name of agus an Vic agus an spread name. Amen. We are here today in a very special way in the presence of God to remember Michael O'Higgins. And you know, to remember somebody is to make them present again in a strange kind of a way. We gather with thanksgiving and sorrow and all. We think of all those whose lives in world wars and conflicts past and present have been given and taken away in the cause of justice, freedom and peace. To pray for all who are in bereavement, disability and pain, continue to suffer the consequences of fighting and terror, and to commit ourselves, young and old, to the work in its penitence and faith for reconciliation between the nations of our troubled world, so that under God, people of every race and creed may be at peace. So let us take a moment of silence to remember Michael in a very special way. The reading is from the Gospel of St. Luke. On the first day of the week at early dawn, the women went to the tomb, taking the spices they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly 2 men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but he has risen. Remember how he told you, while he was still in Galilee, that the Son of Man must be handed over and be crucified and be raised up on the third day." Then they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all this to the 11 and to all the rest. And this is the word of the Lord. As we gather today in a spirit of honour and a spirit of peace, in this sacred place, we remember all who made huge sacrifices and gave their lives for a cause they were passionate about. Lord, hear us. We pray today that our world will be a world that will respect all people of all faiths, all cultures, all religions. We will always have that healthy respect through the power of the Holy Spirit. Lord, hear us. We give thanks today for all the people who organised this event of remembrance, and we ask God to bless them, that while they continue to do work like this, nobody will ever be forgotten in the past. Lord, hear us. For all the deceased members of the Higgins family and all their associated relationships, Lord, hear us. And for Michael we say, may his soul and the souls of all the faithful departed, through the mercy of God, rest in peace. Arnehar, Tarniav, Gunefa, Denham, Godagadriot, Gunenta the Holland, Talaf, Maranenta, and Yav, Honor all the whole, through Dunino, August Matuna Fiaka, Marabahamid, the Dalbegun Fain, August Alex Shinigahu, Oxeshin Oak, and Anamahar, August and Vic, August and Spread Nave. Amen.
Almost. Now I would like to call on Mairead Finnegan to recite some poignant verses for us.
Battle of the Somme. Receiving orders down from the High Command, with plans to move forward once again in this mess they call war. Final words were said in this hell, this battlefield. Machine guns will not fail as the bullet rain hits the flesh. Endless casualties, over 1 million dead. Obsolete tactics blended with modern armament. Entrenched in the Battle of Somme, the indecisive event, once a morbid mess. Blood spilt everywhere. Thousands of men now lay dead. First battle to introduce tanks, an unforgiving hell, fighting for the fatherland, desperately making a stand, trench warfare supreme. All the divisions clash. Indecisive result, nobody in benefit. 5 months of bloodbath, the fierce fighting for the Somme. The start-up of the encounter, 1st of July. Unbelievable carnage towards the Brits. Exit the trench when the order is whistled. A few seconds to live. Machine gun turns mow you to bits. Failures on the tactical side. Human wave assault. The death toll will mount. Unprepared for the misery. Just a mad waste of human lives. What's the price for a mile? Is there any substance behind bravery and honour? To enter no man's land or to die in the distress of those trench lines. Unable to reach the objective? Set by the old men around a stuffed table. Experiencing hell, the horrors of war, depending on luck, not on reason.
Now we'd like to call on the members of the 22nd Battalion, members of the Irish Guards, and members of the Royal British Legion, and members of the Organisation of National Ex-Servicemen to lay a wreath on behalf of their organisations in the memory of Michael O'Higgins. Thank you, gentlemen. I would like to call on Brendan O'Higgins to recite 2 verses of a poem written by Padraig MacPirish, an Irishman who also died in 1916, who fought and died for what he believed in very much the same way as Michael O'Higgins fought and died for what he believed in. Brendan will now recite 2 verses from Bansleva e Queenevic.
Gurmagad Finan. Bron an Mas, Shedov Mochrisha, Duda Mogra, Gestag me Cleitje. Gan Carid, gan Campanach, Fuian Mahirsha, ach an Lane Shohim Lar, agus me a Queen. A Gwalan Tlevagam Tranona, Laur na Henley Lum Gabronach, a Nesk Bain agus an Crataglorach, a Fosh Neistam, Gareag Mastorach. Bron an Mas, Ní féidir a héana, lagan sé úr agus crían le chéile, is a wacín bháinla, is sé mo chéasa, do halling chéamh, bheit déana créafóig, a chón ó.
Gormaga the Rendon. I would now ask you to stand, and we'll observe 1 minute's silence, which will be followed by the Ode to Remembrance, which will be read by Commodore Dennis Cronin. Immediately after the Ode to Remembrance, the Guard of Honour will be called to attention and will reverse arms and pay tribute. The band will then play The Last Post. 1 minute silence.
ode of remembrance. They went with songs to the battle, they were young. Straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
Gardanore, Ashonfreak, Kletje. Up. Up.
Broad, Portage.
Gardanore, Kletje, Ashonfreak, Lee. Up.
Cheers.
Gardanore,
Now,
Guard,
the
Ada.
tricolour will be raised.
Broad, Portage.
When the tricolour is raised, the band will play Reveille, which indicates that all those who die will eventually rise from the dead. Now the Guard of Honour will render compliments to the flag as the piper plays our national anthem, Our Own Unveiling.
Gardanore, Curtage Tumbrata, Telegig, Kletje. Gardanora, Umprig, Klitche.
Right, cheers.
That, ladies and gentlemen, concludes the ceremony for this afternoon. Thank you very much for your kind attention and your attendance. And you are all now invited for afternoon tea to our local cafe across the road. Thank you very, very much. Well, I'm still doing the math. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Gardanora, Ashkori, Klitche. Gardanora, Lee, Mark.
And as you mentioned, Mike, it's dead nice. It's pretty good, yeah. And the broadcasting was not good.
No, it wasn't.
Quite okay. Probably see a good few years, yeah. Okay, John.
Hi, how are you? Nice bit of bugling there.
Yeah, I saw more cover.